so you've returned. Happy Halloween, my friend, or Blessed Samhain, what have you. There's like 8 holidays going on right now. But yeah, I once again welcome you inside my humble foxhole. Humble and foxhole are words I rarely use next to each other. Still, I'm glad to have you back here, my dear friend. It's been a while. Well, it's been a month, but it's currently the year 2021, so technically, it's been 7 years. I thoroughly missed you, though, when chatting about ghosts and things. Come, sit, let me clear a seat. I'll pour you a drink. Tea? Wine? Odd esoteric brew? Oh, no, not that. That's, come up with a joke later. Don't ask me, that's just what the note says. But still, take a seat. I'll get right to it today. I don't have any Foxxo Esoterica world-building concepts this time, and I haven't made the acoustics of my new space sound nice yet. I'm distracted. This is a particularly frightening and haunting time, and I'd like to share a legend that I consider to be a tad bit harrowing. And also really cool, and I love him a lot. Have you heard of Robert the Doll before? No? Or yes? Let's just pretend you said no. I have a script to follow. Well, allow me to introduce you to a haunted doll legend that has the ability to actually curse anyone who dares speak ill of him. And sometimes, he can even haunt you if you simply think bad thoughts in his regard. That's not the only reason I called him cool and amazing also, by the way. I think he's really neat, like for real. I also asked permission to talk about him before you came here, so if that doesn't work, you'll probably know soon. You're here too, after all. Welcome to the Foxhole at Foxxo Esoterica. I promise I was sober when I wrote this. Welcome to the first episode of the second season of Foxxo Esoterica, the drunk comedy furry paranormal podcast wherein I think I stuck 4 extremely meta jokes in the cold open, and I don't really feel bad about it. It's funny. I'm your ghostly host who, that's actually misleading of me. I'm very much so alive. The Fox Witch Forcetti Fox. Tonight I am joined with special guest and my beloved mate, Zuma the Puma, in person once again. And for this special October 31st episode, we're going to be discussing a legend that... You heard the cold open, it's Robert the Doll. First things first though, housekeeping stuff. Not that it affects much of anything, but I live in Germany now. I made the move and bada bing bada boom, me and Zuma have an apartment in Essen. So what does that mean for this project? I think soon I want to try to do 2 episodes a month. I'd like to start with that goal in my heart, though I don't think I'm going to be able to make the next episode on November 10th like I normally would. That may be pushed back a bit because this episode's already late as it is, being a Halloween episode and everything. I will also endeavor to not make 3-hour-long episodes, so I'm going to try more 2-part episodes if that ends up being a recurring theme for this season. And those would encompass the 2 episodes I put out a month. I think I'm also going to ditch the new moon, full moon idea because I don't like it personally, and I'm just going to probably interject episodes that deviate from the form at random. Planning things ahead of time is less fun. Also, I'm going to plug my Patreon and coffee again, because I just moved to Germany. And, like, that sort of thing costs money. And I don't need to make any more money off of this project. Of course. This is a project of passion, and I'm here to have fun, and it's going to come out regardless of whether or not I get paid. But that being said, my Patreon is patreon.com/forcetti-fox, and my coffee is https://ko-fi.com/forcetti-fox. The music stopped a while ago, so I'm kind of doing way too much housekeeping, but it's season 2 and I'm allowed to do that. Last but not least, you know what? Let's plug it just a little bit here. I also released an album last month. Follow the Foxfire by me, Forcetti Fox, of course. Here's a little instrumental bit from the song Hitching with the Hellhound. It's on Bandcamp, Spotify, Apple Music, other sites. It also pertains heavily to themes of paranormal and esoteric things, as well as furry stuff. And yes, I do way too many personal projects. And yes, I did sell my soul a long, long while ago to find the time to do this sort of thing. I didn't want to jump back in without plugging the album, though, because it's a thing I've been working on for the past year, and I'm mighty proud of it. Anyway, though, I'm assuming that you want to hear a ghost story, so let's actually do the episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Foxxo Esoterica. I am once again joined with my fiancé, whom I live with now for real. Everybody, welcome back to the podcast, Zuma the Puma.
Hi, everyone. Did y'all notice those 3 gaffes in a row that he just did in the first 10 seconds of the podcast?
I think I actually didn't record until then, but exposing. I know what I'm doing. Yeah, I think I wrote a script for the intro explaining that I'm here now. I'm in Germany and we live here and we're in our apartment in Essen and we're recording out of our apartment in Essen and I need to get a lot of soundproofing stuff eventually so the echo gets minimized, but it's fine for now. I think I've recorded it worse.
Yeah.
I think the Chicago apartment was actually way worse than this one.
Really?
Down a wooden...
Where did you record it in the apartment?
The living room.
Oh yeah, that was big.
Yeah.
It had like a high ceiling too, didn't it?
Yeah.
Right.
Fully a cathedral going on there.
Yeah. Also, like, maybe it just echoed down the long hallway and then just kind of came back. So you'd say like a word and a minute later it just kind of knocked you in the head again.
Yeah. It's like we're fucking mammoth caves up in here. Well, tonight is the first episode of the second season. I think I've explained that also, but just in case you want to hear it a second time, Foxxo Esoterica was on a little hiatus, and now it's Halloween. Not right now. Halloween is when the episode's going to come out, but it's the 28th right now to give a little behind the scenes, and we're doing a little special episode. But this is a recurring guest, so I don't even know. Do you want another introduction? Have you been up to anything fun? You want to plug anything?
Yeah, I don't have anything to plug, as usual. I just started university. That's all that develops since then. Well, started again, I suppose, after switching majors. And yeah, I'm on the show again.
What's going on with it? Welcome to Foxhole Esoterica. Do you want to do glottal stops with me?
Okay, we need to get back into this.
We're doing it. For the brewing this evening, we're back in Germany, so I got a German beer. We're keeping it light this evening, because...
It's quite literally strong beer, though. I mean... 7.9%. And it's half a liter of it.
It was not a 6-pack. I only got a couple.
Yeah, only a couple. It's like, together they're probably like a strong serving of vodka.
Shit, you're right. I kind of just looked at this and I was like... So this one looked fun because it was 40 cents. But also looked good. I think I saw the strong and I was like, ooh, that'll be a strong flavor. And now I'm just now looking at the percentage.
Yeah,
for the very first time.
I don't know if, like, there's no photo of this and you probably aren't going to bother to Google this, but it literally has 7.9 in the largest font on the entire fucking can on there.
It's, I mean, it was, I like the Perlenbacher and it was, yeah, there's no reason for me to have missed that. It's very easy to see. But that being said, I don't think it's the strongest beer I've had on the podcast, so we're fine.
Oh my.
We're gonna do the little ASMR bit, and the first taste is. Yeah, that's a Pilsner, and it's strong and it's robust and it's German and we love it, and it's good.
This type of beer, or like this kind of brand, or like universe of brands, of like semi-store brand beers in cans is actually cheaper than some bottled waters. And I'm not like, and I'm not saying it's like cheaper than Dasani or something. It's like cheaper than certain store brands.
Yeah.
High volume.
It's really nice, and it tastes better than like. Because we're in Germany and they kind of just make beer here. It tastes literally better than Pop's Blue Ribbon. It tastes better than Bud.
Yeah, people always talk about how like America has all the great craft breweries, but the thing is like, if like the American craft breweries are like at 80%, then your average German craft beer is just going to be at 70%.
Yeah, and it's going to be 40 cents.
Yeah. So I think that's like the big difference between like German brewing, because like people complain about German beer all the time, that it's boring and we don't really do anything with it, like even compared to other like European nations and stuff. Mm-hmm. But that's because like we have very strict rules for it. You know, the Reinheitsgebot. Maybe people heard about that before.
I don't think I've talked about it on the podcast.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, it's like from Bavaria, and it just means that we basically have very, very strict rules. If you look at that kind of beer, I assume it's gonna have the same 3 ingredients of like the highest class beers as well.
I should probably actually read that.
Yeah, cut it out if it's wrong.
Cut it out if it's wrong. Oh no, we got Gerstenmalz. I'm pretty sure since that's in bold, that means something important.
I see.
Yeah, right there. I'm learning German, I promise.
Yep, this is like ingredients, 3 ingredients, water, malt, and hop. Like that's all you got. That's all that is in there. There's no additives or anything. Because like again, it's like the law. So like your average beer is gonna be pretty well done, I guess. Because like the ingredients are all the same everywhere.
German beer, everybody. If you come to Germany, probably drink the beer. If you're coming to Germany, you knew that. That's what you're coming for. The encyclopedic collection this evening also is Iramabu Phantasma, meaning it's ghost story time. And without further ado, you ready for the introductory bit?
Yes.
Alright. So before we begin, I genuinely want to do something a little bit different than I do for introductory bits. Like, and I don't even want to call this a bit, because straight up, I actually want to do this. This legend has an appreciation for those who choose to ask it permission before seeing it, taking pictures of it, talking about it, etc. And historically, if you don't ask permission before you do these things, it will curse you. So I'm just going to do that for real. Robert the Doll. My name is Forsetti Fox. Sometimes it's Aaron. And I'm here with my guest. You can say your name if you want to avoid a curse.
Do I have to use my given name or?
However you feel safe.
I am hi Robert. This is Robert.
Robert the Doll.
Robert the Doll. I'm just a guest here, but just to be sure, I am Lucas. Sometimes going under the artist name of Zuma Puma.
Good. And we both are from Essen, Germany. You have to mention that. You have to mention where you're from.
Here, are they?
I'm from Michigan also.
I'm from Lower Saxony.
Woo! This legend is a haunted doll, but it's not just that. Lately, people who went to visit it have straight up gotten in bada bing car accidents, they've gotten illnesses, they've had job loss, and maybe it's a bit of like, oh, the first thing I'm thinking is haunted doll, and these bad luck things are connected to that. But it happens a lot, and so people need to respect Robert the Doll, or else they're going to be very much so cursed. And so that's what I'm doing this evening. And welcome our third guest this evening, Robert the Doll in spirit. Thank you for being on the podcast. Hope it's cool that we're talking about you. I personally find you very cool and fascinating and would love to do this in as much of a respectable way as possible. Thank you very much. You're incredible. I feel like we covered our bases. Have you heard about this one before?
No.
Alrighty. Cool. Without further ado, let's get to references. This is one of the more scary legends that I can think of in terms of anybody online that knows Robert. It's like, oh, this one is the one that'll keep me up at night. Because it's Halloween. We gotta go balls to the walls with the scariness. But if you know him, you know him. And if you don't, Robert the Doll is a haunted doll currently residing in Key West, Florida. Robert was first brought to America right at the turn of the century from a German toy manufacturer and has since been linked with paranormal activity with literally everybody who lived in the same house and or museum with him. Also, I didn't mean for this to go to a German route. I really just didn't know he was originally from Germany, but like he is, and so we're bringing it home here. As I mentioned before, he has cursed people who talk ill of him, or as some claim, even think about him negatively. People sometimes be like, my life turned around ever since I made fun of him in my own head. But yeah, that's Robert. Now I'm going to do references. I ordered this poorly. We got Wikipedia, as always. We have an article titled Robert the Doll on the Ghosts and Gravestones of Key West's website. Could not find a writer's name. We have an article titled Caution, Mind Your Manners with Robert the Doll on Horror Obsessive by Melissa Bastick. The story behind the world's most terrifying haunted doll on Atlas Obscura, written by Andy Wright. There's a whole website, robertthedoll.org, and I think the content is managed by both the Key West Art and Historical Society and by a man by the name of David Sloan, who wrote a book that I didn't read, because I couldn't find it online. And last but not least, Robert the Doll has a trilogy of movies based on him, named Robert the Doll, The Toy Maker, and Robert Reborn from 2016 to 2019.
But that's a knockoff from Child's Play.
It has to be.
Yeah, because I feel like the third one's literally just the name of the second one from Child's Play.
Yeah. Although I did read somewhere that the director of Child's Play has officially stated, this story is not based on Robert the Doll, I promise.
Yeah, it's fun. Do you know that in Germany, they didn't call it Child's Play, or like a variation on it, they just called it Chucky the Murder Doll. It's like being a little... It's like, yeah, it's a... You know, you get what you pay for, I guess.
So honestly, I think I always thought it was Chucky until maybe like 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, I just really like the subtitles, like Chucky, the murder puppet doll thing.
Murder dolls are fun, and I love them. And Robert the Doll is a cool one. Have you seen that movie?
No.
Not the Robert one, Child's Play.
I think back when I still watched it, I watched like Nostalgia Critics on it, but that's it.
Gotcha. Well, if you like this story, I'd imagine checking that one out may or may not work for you, because as I stated, Child's Play is not based on Robert the Doll. Let's start with the haunting, though. I see my good guest Zuma has put on a Halloween haunted house background for the TV. I like the setting. It's
better than lights on in this disgusting bland apartment.
We'll get tapestries soon enough. Yeah. Or other posters.
Yeah.
Without further ado, let's get to the haunting. Alright, so backstory. In 1904, in the Key West of Florida, Robert Eugene Otto is having his 4th birthday when, as a gift, he receives an odd-looking doll from his grandmother, who just took a trip to Germany. It's also his grandfather in some stories. That one's inconsistent. Here's a picture. Let me actually show you a picture of what he looks like. Everybody at home, take the time to pull over and actually look it up, because this is a podcast and I can't show you any pictures. But if you want to see on the computer, yeah, you can get up now. This is what he looks like.
Oh, that's delightful.
Oh yeah, he's a gem. I'll actually describe the picture though, just in case you didn't look it up at home, you lazy people. He's a little blonde boy, around 1.5 meters / 3 feet-ish tall, dressed in a white little sailor's uniform with a white sailor hat. He has a few red trimmings here and there on the outfit. He also has a face that looks textured a bit like a pincushion. It definitely has a couple holes in it. I'll get to that in a second. He has black beady eyes in the literal sense. They're just straight up black beads, with little holes all around his face, and a really flat nose and a lipless, almost imperceptible mouth. That's what he looks like. Anyway, Robert Eugene Otto, the real-life boy, on his 4th birthday, Grandpa gets back from Germany, or his grandmother, and presents Eugene with this doll as a gift. My sources state that the family member purchased this doll from the Steiff Company, which is the pincushion and eventually the OG teddy bear manufacturer over in Hamburg, Germany. So that's fun. We're in that country now. We did it.
Yeah.
The Ottos were German immigrants, actually, and routinely traveled back and forth between there and the U.S. to visit relatives all the time, which, like, same, if you subscribe to Patreon or visit my coffee, it's not cheap, so if you do that sort of thing, sometimes it helps when you support people who go back and forth between Germany and America more often than most people. I think I've plugged this already, but y'all can check that out. But back to the podcast, it is interesting to note itself that Robert himself wasn't like a mass-produced product like the teddy bear. It's speculated that he was just straight up made as a one-off thing by the company's founder, Margaret Schneider, as a window display, just to be like, here's the sort of thing I can make. But it probably wasn't meant to be sold. It was mostly just like a window display thing. And when he was sold, people imagine, especially when they like collaborated with people who did the transactions back then, that he was probably really expensive. I also forgot to mention this somewhere, but for even more context, Eugene was the youngest of 4 children in a family of aforementioned German immigrants, now working 2 pharmacies in Key West. They all lived in a stately property known as the Artist House, which was built in the 1980s, and it looked pretty. But bada boom, Robert the Doll is now in Florida, and Robert Eugene Otto becomes immediately infatuated with him. Any takes so far?
I'm like mostly surprised that it's just like in the 80s. Like, I don't know, you'd think haunted dolls would always be from Victorian times.
1800s, you mean?
Oh, you said
1890 and 1902.
Yeah, I think you just said 1980.
Oops. Yeah, no, it was 1890s.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense then.
I think
this whole thing then.
Yeah, this whole thing.
Aside from that, it's like, yeah, it's an interesting story. Crazy how much money pharmacists make, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just have a fucking manor with it. Like, you just make creams and otherwise just sell stuff, I guess. Also, I guess back in the day they also sold soda.
Yeah. And I think they also did a lot of medicine that was also just straight up, here's cocaine, here's your weed.
Well, you say that like, you know, they knew any better.
Yeah, but I imagine that people probably bought that not just for medicinal use. So.
Probably not. I don't know though. Like, I mean, you could always buy painkillers and just get off your narcos on them, but I think most people aren't going to do that.
Yeah.
Like, I think the majority just only thought it's like, oh yeah, cocaine. That's going to keep me awake all the night.
It'll help my toothache.
Like, it's like a cultural thing that we like consider completely crazy these days, but yeah.
Yeah. I always think that like general stores and stuff weren't lucrative because these ones just have, here's your little willow bark for the pain, the aspirin. But then pharmacies are where they're actually experimenting with stuff and end up accidentally making things that people really want.
And also just like had a bunch of stuff. I remember going to like a Ford in Canada, which is probably the most boring part of this podcast. But pharmacies are kind of hilarious in that they just sold cool things a lot. They sold soda, they sold sweets. I think they sold cigarettes back in the day.
Probably.
I mean, everybody sold cigarettes, I guess.
We don't have like pharmacies in America that are... It's uncommon to find a straight up pharmacy that you just like, go in and get stuff.
You have like drugstores, right? You have like Walgreens, I guess.
Yeah.
Or like you have the pharmacy at Costco, I guess. Now in Germany it's like a really it's kind of a old fashioned thing really. It's like it's been here forever and like you just have like regular pharmacies that are headed by like a pharmacy family. So it's actually kind of interesting to hear about them just doing it in America.
Yep. And it worked back in the day. They have a mansion. They also bought Robert the Doll, segued back in. Which, yeah, that's like another thing. Like, they moved back and forth between the countries a lot, and they bought this, like, expensive-ass thing just for a gift. And I think there was, like, a lot of old money involved, too, to a degree.
Yeah.
I imagine. I don't think I found that anywhere. I just kind of assumed. But Robert the Doll, important to note, was never like around when anybody died. The thing that stresses me out mostly about this dude, and I'll talk more about it later, is that like they just bought him and things immediately started happening. With there no deaths in the family, no tragedies, they bring the doll home and haunting right out of the gate. It's very weird. What all sort of haunting stuff happened? Well, to start, Eugene's parents, Thomas and Minnie, claimed that Eugene would spend literally every night talking to the doll as if it were a human being, which is kind of normal. But then they went to Eugene's room to find various toys and things mutilated and destroyed, and Gene being like, this was Robert. Robert did this. He also decided to just give Robert the doll his first name, and for the rest of his life, Eugene Otto would just be like, call me by my middle name, Eugene. And he did that for the rest of his life. Also known as Gene. Robert, yeah, I worded it way better than I did in the notes. There we go. He gave the doll's name. And yeah, all this is kind of normal for a 4-year-old to a degree, but his parents would hear another voice sometimes, which was distinctly lower and not Eugene's voice, just answer back. Toys would continue to turn up broken, and Gene would continue to do the doll playing game, until one night, when Gene was around 10 years old, something a tad bit horrifying happened. Thomas and Minnie heard Gene scream in the middle of the night and found his door to be locked. Just straight up, the door was locked from the inside. After forcing the door open, the parents found Robert the doll pinning Gene down to his bed amidst the backdrop of a thoroughly trashed room, with even more broken toys and even broken furniture at this point. Which is like, oh, a 10-year-old can't do that. That's weird. Some websites claim that things were actually flying around the room paranormally the moment the parents arrived, but if that were the case, it feels to me like they'd actually probably not have the doll anymore after this day, because they will continue to have the doll after this day. All being said, Gene kept crying out, Robert did it! It was Robert, and the parents, sort of believing their child, but like not believing in paranormal fantasies, were just like, alright, we'll keep Robert in the attic, and that'll be it from here on out. However, from that day forward, the whole household, family and servants, would just report odd giggling in the night, running sounds up and down the stairs and in the attic, and a small shape just darting around the house, even as, Gene grew up and wasn't the size of a child anymore. The family would often find Robert propping himself up at the foot of Gene's bed, even if they left him in the attic locked, and they claimed to see his face change shape from time to time. From simple smiles to malicious-looking grins to, sometimes just a face of anger. However, as the family grew up and such, nothing else entirely dramatic happened to the degree of pinning Gene down and choking him out. Just minor haunting type stuff. And then one day, Eugene moved out to go to college, leaving Robert the doll behind.
Aww.
Thoughts?
Yeah. It's a haunting story, classic. It's a doll, it starts murdering people. People don't like dolls, so
people
they're gonna think that. So they think that it's gonna start murdering people. It's people. I don't know why people make dolls. I never understood the point of it. I feel like they had. That's something that screws around with me all the time, anyways. Because did plush and Barbie doll production advance so much in 50 years that we don't have these fucking insanely creepy Victorian toys anymore? I never got that. I never understand it. We have good-looking plushies these days, and then you go back to 1890 and you got a fucking teddy bear with a face that looks like it's been etched into the side of a tree to keep away the dark spirits. And I don't get it, because I feel like they would have had at least comparable aesthetic ideas about it.
Yeah, I guess I could look into that, because that feels like something somebody's had to study. But yeah, dolls just kind of either looked really uncanny back then, or downright horrifying.
Also plushies, it's the same thing, teddy bears, they look fucking ridiculous.
I'm pretty sure the OG teddy bears looked fine. Margaret Schneider teddy bears.
Didn't they have the thin limbs?
Oh yeah, probably, but I don't think their faces. I could look it up actually.
Yeah, I guess it does have really classic thing on the face.
I'm pretty sure Margaret Schneider they look fine. Margaret Schneider single-handedly decided to make plushies and dolls normal. Good for her. Except for Robert the doll, that one was potentially a miss.
It's funny, I didn't even mention this yet, but Steif is still a thing in Germany.
Oh yeah.
Oh wait, is it Steif? Yeah, no, it is Steif. There's also Schleich, for example. They're famous for their little horse minis that have dicks.
Classic.
Yeah.
Wait, what's the name of that one for future notes?
No, it's toys, but I remember we sold them at the bookstore where I used to work, and I just took a look myself, boredom. It was a fucking bookstore and I didn't have anything to do. And yeah, they just have model genitalia, all of them. You can't see it on them.
Yeah. Oh, it's just statues and stuff.
Yeah.
It's a lot of horse statues in Germany.
Yeah.
With a lot of parts.
Yeah. It's hilarious.
Oh, I guess we have the Wall Street Bull.
Yeah, the Wall Street Bull was fucking hilarious. Actually, one of the most surreal moments in my entire life. It felt like they were just doing a bit for some TV show, some late night TV or whatever.
Yeah.
They're trying to trick passersby into making weird faces. But no, it's just something people do.
It just has a ball and you touch it. Balls, more than one, and you touch it for financial luck.
Oh, not to veer too far off topic, but did you hear about the art installment near the Washington Bowl?
Oh, I think you were telling me about this one.
Yeah.
Is that the one with the bananas?
Yeah, they put a thing of a gorilla there and then it's surrounded with bananas and it's about Harambe and apparently it's supposed to teach us about responsibility of financial markets. And I think that moment I just kind of decided that art needs to be stopped at a point.
Yeah.
I fucking hate art.
Art, I have a degree in it and I also agree. I don't want to do art anymore. I want to leave all of it behind.
So people always talk about how,
podcasting isn't art.
Yeah.
Don't let anybody tell you.
We're merely observing art.
Yeah, we're just talking. We're just having a fun conversation. We're not doing art.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. That one's bonkers. It's anytime anybody appropriates... This is also off topic. Anytime anybody takes a meme from, that's long past its expiration date and tries to do anything with it, it will never work.
Yeah.
Both at a mimetic level or a symbolic level.
It just has this, really stale art feel to it, any modern art gallery, where it's I guess people thought about it, but it was probably some coked up artist that gets 50 million on a commission of a splotch of red on a white canvas. those people I feel like they don't really have the spark.
Yeah.
I don't know why those are the ones that get paid a shit ton of money for it. Maybe they're just better at like convincing rich people.
Yeah, there's an art form to that also.
Yeah.
I'll get good at it. We'll see. Speaking of art, you'll never guess what Eugene Otto decided to get into.
Is it art school?
Yeah, he got into art school. He was a painter and he studied fine arts in New York and then Paris for 3 years.
Don't tell me he tried to apply to Vienna and got rejected. I know where that story's going.
No. He actually, Eugene Otto. Oh, he's an otter now. Recanonizing it.
Furry and slip.
I'm going to use that forever and ever. That was good. In Paris, though, Eugene Otto meets his soon-to-be wife, Annette Parker, and the two move back to New York in the 30s to work as artists. Painters, writers, and composers. Which is like, it's the 30s. Are they going to make it? But they do. They succeed, and they make a lot of songs and people like them, and they make a lot of paintings and people give them money, and they succeeded.
I feel like that's the trick with, like, being an artist in the 30s. Like, if you heard about the people, they were probably doing really well.
Yeah.
So I feel like all the artists that didn't do well just kind of died in the gutter, so you would never even hear about it.
Yep.
It's great.
Their paintings are now fuel for a fire in an alley somewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, they...
Just like Rent.
Aww. I don't want to talk about Rent. We gotta pay that next week. I love hating Rent. Tricked you all. Hate Rent.
I don't even know what Rent is. I just watched a video about it and now I hate it.
I've seen it. It's bad. I just don't like it at all. God, we're off topic. That's Foxhole Esoterica, baby. We just don't fucking talk about ghosts half the time.
Yeah. Just because I don't even get the metaphor. Like, they're burning their contract, like their leases. Like, how long is that gonna burn? Like 3 seconds?
Yeah.
Like, I get it's a symbolism, but like, it's not even gonna be that nice of a fire. Just like burn the place down, like actually make a statement.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about Rent.
Yeah. Don't watch Rent. Don't consume art.
Watch the video about Rent by Lindsay Ellis.
We love Lindsay Ellis in this household.
Yeah.
If you, Lindsay Ellis, are listening to this podcast, you're invited as a guest anytime.
Would be nice.
Would be nice.
Would be nice.
To have Lindsay Ellis on our side.
Yes.
So Eugene and Annette are vibing in New York as successful Great Depression artists when one day... fun fact, Gene would later go on to design a lot of art pieces that would be in the gallery at the Fort East Martello Museum in Key West. This will be important later. It was important, though, to mention that this entire time, Robert the Doll stayed in the attic at the artist house back in Key West, where actually there was significantly less ghost-type events going on, and I will be the first to admit it. However, one day, Eugene's mother fell really ill, and seeing as his father had already passed away earlier, Eugene and Annette decided to move back to Key... What?
I think I just had a random muscle tension, but it sounded like someone was poking me.
Oh.
Ooh, it's getting scary.
Robert, we're cool. We love you.
Yeah, literally, we did all the stuff, damn it.
If you want anything else, we're here for you. We're back at the attic, though, with him, because Eugene's mother is ill and passing away. He and Annette decided to fully move back to Key West, just here's where we're going to live, and spend the final rest of his mother's days at her bedside, which did not actually last long, because she died soon after they arrived, like within a week or so. Anne and Gene inherit the artist house, and that is where Robert the Doll re-entered into Gene's life. Annette immediately got the weirdest vibe from the doll, and wanted him to stay in the attic out of her sight completely, for every day. Gene, a tad bit more sympathetic to the doll, agreed, but decked out the attic with a bunch of children's furniture and toys, renovating it in the process, and making it look really nice. Gene actually did a lot of his painting in the attic, too, in the presence of Robert the Doll, when he was doing his art stuff. That being said, Robert was not happy with this still. It is reported that he'd often escape from the locked attic again to a rocking chair in Gene and Annette's bedroom during the day, where he would overlook passers-by from a large window, and it is also said that he'd laugh at or mock school children walking by. Like, he would just make fun of anybody who was walking by the window.
Oh, just like me.
No, we're too high up. We're on the 5th floor.
True, but I do make fun of the school children. That's why I want to be a teacher. It's kind of 90% of the reason for that.
I respect that. Guests at the house reported hearing odd children's giggling again, and once more the sounds of running up and down stairs. Anne herself was also said to have been mocked at and yelled, often from a disembodied voice in the house. That wasn't Eugene, according to her. And one source stated that Robert would, quote, hurt her, but the articles failed to specify how. So who's to say what happened there? All being said, nothing entirely cataclysmic would happen outside of the odd, mysterious event. Like, Robert wouldn't choke a person out or stab anybody or anything like that. Until June 24th, Robert didn't kill anybody in that day either. On June 24th, 1974, Eugene Otto would pass away from Parkinson's disease at the age of 74. It is said that the 10 years leading up to his death, though, Eugene would spend a majority of his time just locked in the attic with Robert, just alone. Or not alone, depending on certain interpretations. But he would just be like, I don't want to see you, Annette. I want to be locked in the attic with Robert now.
Huh.
And then he would eventually pass away.
That do be kind of sus, though.
A little bit. Especially since, one final note, one weird thing that happened was that Anne was written out of Eugene's will entirely, with pretty much all of his belongings being bequeathed to Eugene's older sister, Mizpah.
I was going to ask if he was going to give it to the doll.
No, he gave it to his sister. This is, however, most likely due to Eugene being written out of Anne's mother's will, for some reason. So he was probably just being petty, but it's also, weird. Their relationship wasn't great and the doll didn't help. That being said, Anne and Jean jointly owned the artist house, so that was hers when Eugene passed away. She kept the house still. Though she'd pretty much just kind of sell the house right away, including the doll locked in the attic, to a neighbor, William Geyser. Gaiser, not like the fountain. Geyser claims that Anne Otto told him on the day of the purchase that, quote, that doll was Jean's best friend. Of course, he never had any other friends.
Aww.
So, bada boom?
That's the whole story?
No, not the whole story. That's that part of the story.
Oh.
I'm just pausing because I've been talking for a while.
I don't
giving you a
know what to
platform.
say. The person just died.
Cool.
It's fine.
Rest in peace.
People die.
The next person who has to deal with Robert's haunting is Myrtle Reuter, and also William Geyser. This is where I have a hard time following the story because there's not a lot of articles that talk about this transition of house ownership. But William Geyser would, I think, immediately sell the house to somebody named Myrtle Reuter or something. Some claim that Myrtle sometimes is a 10-year-old girl, though, in 1974 when Eugene died, so she probably wasn't that if she's buying houses. Others claim that Myrtle bought the house instead of William, and that Myrtle herself had a 10-year-old daughter. And others claimed that somebody bought the house, be it Myrtle or William, and then rented it out to people to stay there. But I don't think articles agree on what happened, which is weird because this is going on in the 70s. The 1970s for real. So whose hands is this house in? It's up in the air, and eventually it lands in Myrtle Reuter's hands, because she is dealing with Robert the doll now. In my notes I said, my life is a nightmare. That being said, the new owners of the house were definitely dealing with some haunted stuff. In the headcanon that I'm going to run with, William and Myrtle are probably married, and they have a 10-year-old kid, and then sometimes rent out portions of a very large house to visitors to either stay in long-term or visit. And then they'd sell the house in 1980 and bring Robert the doll with them because Robert ended up in a different house in Key West and was still doing ghost stuff. Too many tangents. So sorry. Ghost time. A lot of the same things would happen. The doll's moving out of rooms and into new rooms, giggling and running around, making noises, changing his facial expressions. People outside the family also claimed to hear Robert bully them, but I don't have a quote or anything, so I assume it was probably PG-13. One article that I didn't mention earlier because I feel like doing it now, because honestly a lot of Myrtle Reuter haunting stories don't really have anything new to add. Robert kept his behavior pretty consistent to the art house behavior. Titled, The True Story of Evil, Doll That Inspired Chucky and Haunted Key West for 100 Years. Probably not that, because that's not grammatically correct. and also wrong, by somebody named Esh on the Lessons from History site, stated that the daughter of the family also had a weird menacing encounter one night that mirrored Gene's very closely. The daughter, also around 10 years old, though anonymous as far as I could find, let out a scream one night, prompting her parents to rush upstairs. They ran into the room, which wasn't locked this time, to see the dolls mutilated, like other dolls mutilated once more, and the family dog with a cord tied tightly around its neck, but he survived. The dog is okay. He's okay. That's important.
That's good, yeah.
The daughter claimed that Robert was darting around the room, jealously damaging the other dolls and also the dog, and then tried to come at her like he was going to kill her. It is unknown when this event took place, but it would then be reported that the daughter would claim to see Robert move around the room and try to comfort her regardless of where her parents put the doll in the first place. Like, they'd be like, uh-oh, he's back in the attic, and then Robert would try to come at her, and she'd scream at it, and it'd stop. Like, that kept happening.
Sounds like nightmares to me.
But then they wake up and the doll's there when the parents come and investigate.
Yeah, I guess sleepwalking or something. You're a weird shit when you sleep.
I do. You're gonna be like the third guest that makes fun of my sleepwalking.
Yes.
Because it hasn't stopped, Gary. You have to deal with it most also.
Yeah. So you also have to deal with my horrifying night terrors.
You don't do those as much as I sleepwalk, I don't think. Haha, I'm worse. That being said, 20 years passed, and the hauntings didn't really wane. Myrtle Reuter would eventually get tired of the doll and donate him to the Fort East Martello Museum, the very same one where Eugene Otto's work was hung, like a majority of it. Whether or not she knew that the paintings were there is beyond me, but either way, 2 months later, Myrtle Reuter would pass away. However, from this point forward, Robert the Doll would absolutely crank up his hauntingness quite a lot. I like that sentence, I stand by it. Let's talk about Robert's origins a little bit more.
Ooh.
I'm going to get to the museum stuff in a sec. But I'm pretty sure Robert the Doll is very interesting because, as I mentioned earlier, nobody died in his vicinity of the entirety of his haunting career until, like, years and years later when Eugene's mother passed away.
Yeah.
And the father. But, like, Robert is not, like, a case where somebody died and is not haunting the doll. And that's weird, right?
Maybe somebody died while he was in transit from Germany.
That's what I was thinking. I actually get that in a little bit.
Ooh.
Not that I, like, found any death records or anything. But there is, like, an apocryphal anecdote that I wanted to talk about. Where Otto's servants of the household are from the Bahamas. And they're named William and Emmeline Abbott. And some articles talk about them, specifically the wrong ones are like, Emmeline gave Eugene the doll and used voodoo. And that is probably really tropey and definitely not the case considering there are receipts from Germany that the doll came from Germany and that it's probably a really culturally appropriative thing that urban legend people attach to haunted stories to make it seem mysterious and cursed. And it also doesn't really add to the story at all. But that being said, there's a theory that Melissa Bastet came up with her article involving infidelity. Apparently, Thomas Otto, Eugene's dad, cheated a couple times and may have even had a child out of wedlock with Emmeline Abbott, though no such child ever grew up in the house in the Otto family lot. And Emmeline would file various lawsuits against the Otto family in the 1910s for an undisclosed reason. It is also may have been the case that Thomas got a venereal disease after Eugene was born, because there's claims about that, even though Eugene himself never had one. But that was also kind of unspecified. Whether or not this theory is true, there's one aspect of the haunting in the 1980s that I previously didn't mention because it kind of involves an actual apparition as opposed to just Roberts running around and stuff, and is the only time that I think anybody's really seen like a ghost attached to this. But a caretaker to Myrtle Reuter, Poochie Myers, reported seeing an angry spirit of a 5-year-old girl in a nightgown pouting on the staircase before disappearing. Also, I think sometimes guests at the museum that Robert is now at currently, and I'll talk about it in a sec, will see a ghost of a little girl, but the Fort Martello Key West, side note, probably has another ghost, maybe, but nobody likes talking about that one, because Robert's cooler. I only saw one article talking about this, though, so who's to say? Personally, the concept of Robert being like a totally unattached thing to the subject of ghost hauntings is more scary than it being a ghost. As you'll soon find out, he operates in an entirely different way from any other ghost haunting. He might be something more than a ghost, and I don't know what that is, and the lack of a haunted origin scares me far more than anything that one could make up to fill that void of information.
Crazy.
Fun?
Absolutely wild. I don't know, apparitions are not something that really work for me, to be honest. I never buy them. I didn't buy one you said you saw the ghost in the theater once.
Oh yeah.
Those are just like...
skeptic.
Yeah, those are just like a little too on the nose for me to really buy into them.
Onto the nose because you think I missaw something or because you think I'm lying?
No, because I think it's probably something different. Probably somebody playing a prank on you or something.
You know, that could be the case. A lot of people in that area were like really big ghosty people.
Yeah,
but
because that was like the big trope there.
I mean,
Don't want to be too much of a negative Nelly here. I'm just saying, like, the apparition story is never really bad because it's like, oh, they saw a little girl on the stairs. Like, what can I say about that? They probably didn't. Like, that's all I can say about that. Like, even if I took it at face value, it's like, oh, okay, wow, there was a child on the stairs, such spookiness. Like,
then you don't really have anywhere to go from.
Yeah, it's like a trillion stories like that. Like, I don't know what to say about that, to be honest.
Honestly, I will believe in Robert the Doll. I don't buy into that aspect of it. I don't think that I think it's a spooky thing. I don't think it's a ghost thing.
Yeah.
But you probably don't think it's either thing.
Yeah.
Also, be as much of a skeptic as you want. I think a lot of people watch this podcast for the fun of it and not because I'm actually proving anything.
I would hope so.
Let's go to the museum hauntings. That sounds like the next thing I wrote down. Moving on, the Key West Art and Historical Society Assistant Director Joe Pais, or Pai, did not look that up, was working at the East Tom Morello, whatever the fucking building is called, in 1994 when Myrtle Reuter arrived to donate Robert the Doll, and then from that day forward, Robert would have an entirely new grounds to haunt. Pais propped Robert the Doll up in an antique chair in the office that he shared with the director, Susan Olson. And at first, Robert would do little things. He'd scooch his chair around slightly, change his expression on his face, and sometimes he'd just stare right at Pais. A lot of the staff had the same old Robert encounters from earlier, like, oh my gosh, I hear noises of something running around in the vents. I hear giggling out of nowhere for some reason in the back office. And then a lot of people would get a horrible vibe whenever they were in the office with Robert. And so the entire staff were like, can we please put him in the artifact storage room, please? And so they did that for 2 years, until the Key West Ghost Tour, as well as other paranormal enthusiasts who's heard about the story, campaigned to put him on a full display. So in 1996, he was put behind glass on full display in the museum. And then other odd sort of things started happening. People who tried to take photos of Robert would find that their cameras wouldn't work, or that the photos wouldn't take. Sometimes the battery would full on die, and sometimes the whole entire thing would crash forever, and there's no way to recover any data on the phone after trying to take a picture of Robert. There's a story wherein one couple discovered that their entire Florida honeymoon and wedding photos were corrupted after taking a photo of Robert. David Sloan, who I mentioned earlier, who crafted the Robert the Doll website and then also wrote the book that I didn't read, also was a part of the first ghost tour movement to get Robert the Doll on display in the first place. But he had similar experiences when he was trying to write his book. Every time, like on 4 different separate occasions, the entire hard drive that the text document was on would just get corrupted, and all the files on it were corrupted, as well as anything saved, like a backup, like any backups that it did, because he was like, all right, I'm on to you, I'll make a backup. That got corrupted also. And so Sloan was able to get tech people to salvage the hard drive itself, but every single time they were able to do that, the document containing his writings on Robert the Doll would remain corrupted. Hey, Robert the Doll, just checking in as I'm writing this Google Doc. Thanks again for being cool with me, writing about you. I'm glad you haven't messed up this yet. I like having this text document. I think you're really cool. I appreciate it. Anyway, Sloan consulted a psychic medium who claimed that A, David should probably write his manuscript by hand and keep it in a fireproof safe, and B, that Robert would give him cancer if the book wasn't good.
Oh yeah, I remember you telling me about it earlier actually. I was wondering if I was going to just completely blind, but yeah, you did tell me that was secret.
Oh yeah.
I guess you did the research like a while ago.
This one I like a lot. I like the story. I didn't read David Sloan's book though, so I could probably love it more if I wanted to. That all being said, he ended up writing the book and didn't get a disease, so he's fine. He did well, I think. The book's probably good because Robert likes it.
Nice.
You also know that I love stories from Reddit, so we're going to do a little Reddit interlude because sometimes people put stuff up there that I find very interesting, even if it's apocryphal. But Reddit user Edgar Allan Pone claims that when they took multiple pictures of Robert the doll, they returned from Florida to find that A, their driver's license had completely disappeared from their wallet, B, they had an intense ear infection out of nowhere, and C, when they developed the photos from their disposable camera, they noticed that any space where Robert would be present in the photo was completely smothered white. Like the photo didn't develop any part where Robert was present, even though the entire part of the photo not containing him developed normally.
Where do you regularly get an ear infection from? Like, don't they always kind of catch you out of like left field? Like,
I feel like you might be right.
It's like, I don't know. Like this is like, oh, I got an ear infection out of nowhere. It's like, yeah.
They kind of
like you didn't go to the ear infection store, I think.
It does help tie in the fact that Robert is able to give people diseases. So that's what people are. You know, you're right. This is one of those stories where people are going into it with expectations, and so something happens.
My driver's license is gone. This must be a ghost.
I do that.
Yeah, I know you do that. Why I'm pointing it out.
I think it's because that's why I put this one down because like 3 things happened instead of maybe 2. I think if 2 silly things happen, I'm not gonna care. But once you get to 3, I'll be like, this is interesting now. Thoughts? Is there any?
That was my thoughts.
I mean, like on my rule of 3s.
That was stupid.
Okay, cool. Another thread contains 2 anecdotes. The first from Dr. Captain Spacey, where they claim that they heard from a ghost tour that when a hurricane came in and flooded the museum, that Robert was missing from his case. And while the staff were expecting him to find him like washed out to sea or just like gone because the hurricane will take things out to sea, they instead found him hiding in the rafters of the museum despite no one working there at the time because there was a hurricane. And he was just hanging up on the rafters. Another instance involves an anonymous person taking a picture of Robert, even after asking permission, and coming home to find that their bottom lips swelled up twice the size, and that their arms and hands developed a rash. This person looked up the rules of Robert online, and which I'll get to in a second, to see what they missed, and still couldn't find anything out. However, after they closed all of their tabs, they found one mysterious tab left open with nothing but a line of text in the Google search being like, you did not say where you were from.
Crazy. Absolutely wild.
You like the story? You having fun?
Oh yeah, totally.
You're not buying into Robert the doll?
No, I'm not buying into Robert the doll.
Usually I'd let you do that, but now that you're like getting a little sarcastic with it, I'm afraid that it might come for you.
No, I mean, the doll, people are gonna make ghost stories about the doll. It's just, I don't know, this stuff is kind of weird because like you have the root story of it, it's kind of the same, and then you just have like 500 different people saying vastly different things that happened to them about them. I feel like Haunted Doll's gonna have an MO. I feel like, ancient magics don't work in stealing one guy's driver's license and setting another guy's house on fire and threatening another guy with cancer.
I think the MO, though, is just causing pain against anybody that disrespects him. And if he's changing it every time, that means he's probably, like... If he does the same thing over and over again, that might be boring. So he's having fun with torture.
You just wanted to say, he wants to stay low-key, maybe?
I don't think he wants to stay low-key. I think he wants to try new things and see what truly hurts people.
Yeah, I guess it's a way to move on from mutilating toys to stealing a guy's driver's license.
That's fair.
Also, I guess maybe his power levels are like lowering because you gave the one guy cancer, or at least had like the gal to threaten him with it.
Yeah.
It's just like, I guess this one's gonna do an ear infection. It's like a couple days, like a couple of weeks after he's like did the picture.
No, it was like at one day he got home from the trip. He has it now, ear infection. He works fast. He's a very talented man. Crazy. Robert the doll. I was talking about the rules. He is totally chill with you as long as you follow these certain rules. It is said that whenever you enter the room in the museum where he is displayed, you should state your name and where you're from. Introduce yourself. Always, always, always ask permission before taking any pictures and tell him that you'll never talk about him or think of him negatively. It is also recommended that you leave candy. Apparently peppermints are his favorite. And if you feel you missed a step or offended him somehow, it is recommended that you mail a letter to him apologizing. It is also said that if the letter contains candy or money, it helps, because that is something that people do all the time.
Oh my god, okay.
One anecdote, the current curator of the museum, Corey Converito, claims that over 1,000 letters have been mailed specifically to Robert, and that the museum keeps them in a catalog, and apparently people often mail joints to him, like weed, and it's happened more than a dozen times with no return address. There's just a lot of people are like, here you go, Robert the doll.
Where does the candy go?
I think they just take it and eat it at the staff, but who knows what happens with the weed.
Interesting. Almost like it's like a bit of a, good deal for them to get fucking letters with candy in it for free. I'm not gonna make a ghost story to get free peppermints. Although I will do it for free weed. Right? And also it's gonna just be a lot of candy.
Yeah.
Also, didn't you say they also put like a little bit of money maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
but probably like $1.
$1,
maybe
it's like free money.
That's fair. It probably does go to the museum if it's the money, but I'm pretty sure that's not the MO. You know what, actually, though, I bet they do kind of keep that legend going on in ghost tours and stuff because it helps museums, and that's cool. I think that's a cool donation technique, and I respect it.
Well, depends on your definition of a museum, I guess.
There's a ghost in it and artwork, so you're fine.
A ghost and artwork. Well,
two of my favorite things. Actually, wait, we hate art now.
Yes.
Fuck. Nobody mail money to Robert. It will go to the arts. Just kidding. Oh my god, no. Everybody, if you listen to this podcast, everybody on my behalf send him like $10 because I don't want to do it right now. I have to ship it from Germany. Where was I at? People mail him weed. What's not funny though is the recurring themes of the curse. A lot of people who have like ailments on Robert's behalf claim camera failure and property loss most of all, and then a lot of times people will get like a random medical ailment. Just across the board. We got swollen stuff, we got rashes, we got colds, flus, aches, earaches, eye aches, cancer. Mm-hmm. Lots of different stuff. There's a lot of stories apparently involving vehicular accidents, severe diseases being contracted, the more rude you are to Robert, and like house fires. But I never saw like an actual story. Are you just watching the music video to Call Me By Your Name but with no
Montero.
sound? The song Montero parentheses Call Me By Your Name.
Yes. it seemed more fitting on the mythological level we are at now.
I kind of like it for the background.
It was like the witch house. The witch house was like for the beginning, and now we're kind of in the 2020s music video area.
Oh, he just licked the belly button.
Can you continue speaking?
Yeah, okay, we're continuing.
Greek.
Other than that cursing, Robert moves around in his display box all the time, and then will make the lights flicker in the museum all the time, and we'll have cold spots, which is a thing ghosts do, but it feels like it's harder to do in Florida.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be. Well, I mean, I guess I have ACs.
Yeah, you're right. There's gonna be a lot of ACs in Florida, but I don't think like the really cold. Like, oh my god, I feel my water freezing.
You feel your water freezing, huh?
In the water bottle, not in your body.
I mean, even then. So, boy,
I didn't read that. I just am assuming. I just made that up. I lied. I mentioned that the Fort Martello, I don't fucking know the name of this museum anymore. That's what I wrote in the notes. That wasn't me forgetting. Has additional hauntings involving a ghost of a woman, but I found an article once and I couldn't find it again, and I didn't write it down, and I feel bad about it. But I do know that the building used to be Confederate military fort. That was built in Civil War, so maybe it involves that.
Racist doll.
No, the doll isn't racist. The woman there is.
What did you have to do with him again?
There's just maybe another ghost in the museum.
Okay.
Hanging out with Robert.
Oh.
Who's to say? Other than that, though, the artist house is definitely still haunted to this day, even though Robert's not in it anymore. People have seen the ghost of a woman there also. And sometimes orbs, which are horrible. Orbs are never good investigation. Orbs are never good evidence. But one story claimed that orbs were witnessed by 20 different people all at once. Odd lights and things are going on in the original artist's house, and odd objects are disappearing here and there. One odd anecdote involved the artist's house manager, because as most haunted places are, this would also become a bed and breakfast. Jessica Schreckengast Naumann, reporting getting mailed a mysterious package with no return address, only containing a letter and a plastic lemon. Now, Naumann kept a bowl of plastic lemons on her front reception desk, and the lemons would mysteriously disappear, only to have guests bring them back, confused as how they got into the room in the first place. However, this package was especially odd. In the note, it is claimed that a woman and her husband, who had just visited the artist's house, found a lemon in their luggage once they got home. She also confesses to sneaking into the attic of the B&B, where she and her husband found a latch to be unlocked, and the two took a couple of pictures. This proved to be a foolhardy thing. Once she and her husband returned home, she developed an odd rash and a fever, which turned out to be the shingles, and her husband developed kidney stones, both of these out of nowhere. The woman knew of the legend of Robert the Doll, and in the letter she claims that she apologizes profusely for taking pictures of the attic, not knowing the parameters of Robert's curse, because she's like, I'll take a picture of where he was, I think that's cool. The attic may be tricky, or the museum may be tricky, but the attic feels fine. But then she asked that her letter be placed in the display case as a warning to anybody else.
Crazy.
Convinced yet? Did the lemons do it?
The lemons, like, I guess they're like very tightly scooched, past getting a heck of a talking to at immigration for getting informed produce, trying to smuggle it in.
Plastic lemons.
What's that?
They're plastic. You're fine.
Yeah, I guess. So this is a very benign haunting.
You get the shingles. Or an ear infection. That's not benign. That's unpleasant.
Shingles, isn't that like what you put on a roof?
Yes. It's a homophone.
Oh.
I don't think I know what shingles is as a disease, besides the fact that it gives you a fever.
Do your research, I guess.
I'll type it in. What the fuck are shingles? Podcast. We have my computer out. I'm checking out what shingles are. I think it's a fever.
Wow.
Shingles disease. Shingles. The Mayo Clinic. It's a viral infection that causes a painful rash. Although shingles can occur anywhere on your body, it appears as a single stripe of blisters that wrap either around either the left or the right side of your torso.
Ooh, take a look at those pictures.
You want to see it?
I don't want to see it. I just think it's funny that if you look for a very benign disease on Google, it's going to be like any physically apparent disease. It's like, oh man, I have like a tiny allergic rash. They're going to put an allergic rash, look at the pictures, and it's going to be a person whose entire left leg is just gone. Like little tentacles start growing out of it, like the absolutely most insane version of it.
I'm going to be real with you. This picture of shingles looks like entirely doable. I would get this and feel fine. Like, it doesn't look great, but that's fine.
Yes.
The shingles are fine. I don't know if it kills people or not. When to see a doctor. We're looking up shingles and not Robert the Doll. You want to talk about Margaret Schneider?
Sure.
Cool. One last thing I wanted to talk about in terms of Robert's origins is that his actual first owner was Margaret Schneider. I had to translate German all by myself for this section, and it took me a while, so I don't care if it's related. I'm talking about it anyway. It's interesting because I jumped onto German Wi-Fi in a German city, and then I typed in Margaret Schneider, and Google is like, oh, you're not going to be using English anymore, are you? It's like, it's hard finding an English article about her. So thank you Fembio Frauenbiografie Forschung, and I'll be honest, Wikipedia.
It was funny in high school, like, oh, you can never use Wikipedia, it's evil, devil's word. And in college, I don't know if this was like the same experience for you, because I guess you went to theater school, I don't know how much citationing you did. But like, in university, they were like, oh yeah, just look it up on Wikipedia. It's like any basic fact, just look it up on Wikipedia. Nobody fucking cares.
Honestly, I think when I was in college with like gen ed classes, my professors were like, use Wikipedia, but go to the bottom, look at where they say sources, and use that in your citations.
Yeah,
it looks like you actually looked it up.
That actually also doesn't really help because often Wikipedia is just gonna use like internet citations. That's not good. So you should like actually do research for like literature.
Yeah, but you don't have to do research for a podcast on ghosts.
Yeah. I mean, it isn't research. You're not even doing research there.
No, it took me like at least 4 or 5 hours to do this.
Well, did you come to a conclusion?
Yeah. We'll get to it in a sec.
Oh my.
Let's talk about Margaret Schneider, though. I think she's important to the story, also as a person. Born July 24th, 1847, she was only 18 months old when she contracted a fever that turned into polio, completely removing the use of both of her legs and significantly hurting her whole right arm, putting her in a wheelchair for the rest of her life. In the village she was born in Gingen, Germany, she would attend school in a wheelchair while her parents attempted to find a remedy, but they were unsuccessful. Despite all this, namely the pain in her right arm, she would complete training as a seamstress by the age of 17, and even learned the string instrument, the harp-esque zither, or zither. Do you know what that is?
Yeah, I know what it is. Like, I heard it before. Isn't it like kind of like a lute? Harp-esque? Yeah.
That's what I remember.
It's weird. Like I heard zither before. It's like something medieval, I think.
Cool. Well, she learned it.
Nice.
Both of which actually helped her earn a living. Soon after, she worked as a mender and a tailor until one day she made a pincushion in the shape of an elephant out of felt. Her nieces and nephews loved the elephant, prompting her to decide to make more, and by 1892, she made multiple patents on various stuffed felt animals, and had a lucrative shop wherein she made and sold such things. For all the furries out there, without Margaret Schneider, plushies wouldn't be nearly as popular as they are today, nor would they look normal. We were talking about this earlier, but her teddy bears look not Victorian.
Yeah.
She helped make them look normal, so all the plushie lovers out there, Margaret Schneider's to thank. Her popularity as a stuffed animal seamstress would skyrocket by the time she created her first bear-shaped stuffed animal in 1902, affectionately named after the U.S. president at the time, Theodore Roosevelt.
Aww.
For some reason. I don't know why she did that.
Probably popular president.
Probably. But here we have the teddy bear. 8 years later, over 1 million of these teddy bears would have already been sold, though Margaret Schneider herself would pass away from a lung infection on the 9th of May, 1909, in the same village where she was born. I bring this up because Robert the Doll was confirmed to have the trademark Steifkopf in Ur button in his right ear before it got torn off by, I think, Myrtle Reuter at that point.
Myrtle Beach?
The person.
Oh. I know.
I think the button in the ear was not in his ear at that point.
Aww.
But a Steiff consultant and archivist in North America confirmed that the doll used to be in the window display in a store in Hamburg, though he was a unique design and never got recreated. I think I brought all that up before, but in case I didn't, it's entirely likely that Margaret Steiff herself hand-sewed Robert the Doll. And though she'd be alive for at least like 10 more years of Robert's existence, perhaps it is Steiff's life that plays into the origins more than anything else. Though to be fair, Margaret Steiff was both rad as fuck and most likely would not have dabbled in anything particularly haunted, and also didn't like have any children of her own or anything like that. But also I don't think she had to deal with a lot of like deaths in her household because of that. I think she was just like made the doll as a passion project.
Yeah.
But in my headcanon, I think if Robert the Doll is a ghost, then it is some event in Margaret Steiff's life that informed Robert the Doll's haunting, as opposed to anything that happened in Florida.
There's a lot of haunting stuff happening in Germany.
Yeah. Which we'll get to in later Foxxo Esoterica episodes.
Oh no.
That I haven't done any research for. But yeah, that's my theory. I don't know if like Margaret Steiff ever had to personally handle an immediate death of somebody she cared about, and if that informed Robert the Doll's existence. I definitely don't think she was like, oh, I'm going to break out the Lesser Key of Solomon and see what I can do with this little dude.
Yeah.
That does not seem like something she would do.
Maybe a burglar broke into her store and he fell through the wooden floor and died. And she just thought it was a hole, so she just put wood over it. And now maybe his corpse is still there.
We'll probably... That's another haunting for another day. Yeah, but you're right that I think I
zoned out and didn't respond to that with the gusto I needed to. But maybe something silly like that happened in Germany and nobody talks about Robert the Doll in Germany because everyone's like, the haunting's taking place in Key West, Florida. Bada boom.
Fair enough.
I'm getting to the conclusions in a sec, but I want to talk about one more thing. She might get an episode later, but I want to talk about Annabelle for a sec. Annabelle is another haunted doll, equally as infamous as Robert, but perhaps more famous, inasmuch as she has booked a role in the Conjuring cinematic universe.
Ooh.
She has her own movie that was released in 2014. This doll's a haunted Raggedy Ann doll, though, and also interestingly, in one Wikipedia article I read, is also entirely unconnected to a mysterious death or circumstance, as far as I could find. She was just haunted like that, which is good for her. I decided just now, actually, this is my note speaking, not me right now, so don't hold me to it, but she'll get an episode later this season. Good for her. I thought I'd bring her up, though, because it's interesting that, like, we have two heavy-hitting doll stories that are, like, claimed to be haunted dolls, but neither of them have to do with a very mysterious death. They just, like, came into the world haunted without anything happening, and that's a really interesting connection in my eyes. Back to the conclusions, though. At the time that I'm writing this, I think Robert the Doll is a real, genuine haunted ghost. Not as a bit, I think he's genuinely a haunted thing. I don't think he's a haunted doll, though, by, like, the idea that a doll is possessed by the spirit of somebody who passed away. He seems to have more, like, of an effect on people and bodily autonomy like, that an ethereal ghost doesn't have. And only, like, 3 occasions that I found deal with any ghost outside the doll itself. I genuinely think something happened in Germany when Robert was in Margaret Schneider's possession, and that we don't know what it is, and whatever that thing is caused the doll to be an enchanted entity that thought highly of itself, attached itself to a doll, got really involved in children's business, and became a bit vindictive to those who would try to occupy said child's time in Robert's stead, even as the child would grow up, which is why Jean and Anne's relationship was strained, which is why it kept going after dolls and dogs and stuff. And which is why it gets mad whenever anybody takes this picture and, like, puts it on display. Like, I think it's a very vindictive spirit. Not that Margaret Schneider's life was a mysterious or cryptic thing at all, but I think that if we try to trace Robert's origin, it's probably something that happened while she was in his possession, the other way around. Well, he was in her possession.
Crazy.
You have thoughts?
No.
You don't think he's real?
I don't think he's real, no. I think he's dull.
You think he's just straight up doll?
I think people be sus sometimes, definitely. Okay. But I don't know. This one doesn't resonate with me as much as the last one. But I guess the last one was several stories, so
that's true.
There was more to it, kind of. Yeah, I guess that's kind of issue with me with this one. Like, your average haunted story is just going to be like one root story that seems like it was kind of manufactured from, you know, stuff that kind of overlap between stuff that happens. And then you just have like 500 fucking stories that are probably made up by the museum people to get people to look at the museum.
I'll grant you that. I think that makes sense. Yeah. I think that Robert the Doll isn't a ghost. And I don't think that it's useful to approach him with that angle. I think that if it's not a ghost, it's like a weird supernatural entity. But there's also like the other side of that where Eugene Otto himself spent a lot of time infatuated with the doll. He's spending his time with it. There could be a degree of like a mental situation going on with him where he projected a personality onto the doll and then did different voices. What's the lead in the water back then? Yeah. And a lot of stuff that was described back then could be the case of somebody.
That's what I'm saying. I like the root stories. Like a lot of stuff that kind of makes sense. You can kind of approach it, but then like the monster is, oh man, saw a doll and suddenly my little toe broke.
Yeah.
It's boring. It's not interesting. It doesn't sound like a primordial evil enacting its will upon its environment. It doesn't even sound like, oh man, this guy's probably a lunatic. It just sounds like these people are gullible morons. Yeah. That happen to have something bad happen to them shortly after seeing the thing.
I don't think Robert's evil. I think he's chaotic, unrelated to what you were saying. I think he just does things chaotically. I don't think he does.
Does he ever do something nicely?
No.
Yeah. So probably evil.
He does not. Good point. But yeah, the root story definitely has more things that are connected, and the expanded story has car accidents and an ear infection. That's all my notes. How you feeling?
Good. Very good.
Good?
Yeah.
Any final conclusions? Not in the story in general, but anything you want to say?
Not really, no.
Cool.
I can't really think of much to say about it, because, like, again, I don't want to be a downer or negative now, like I said earlier. It's just, this type of story isn't anything to me. It seems so mundane. Like, ghosts, like if ghosts exist, they aren't going to give you an ear infection.
I think Robert the Doll is one of those stories that falls into like a urban legend category, not in terms of like people are making it up, urban legend, but like from what I've read and stuff, Robert the Doll is a ghost story that actually inspires fear in people that read about it in a way that sometimes feels like unearned, like it's a irrational fear that people have of Robert. And I think a majority of it comes from the like root of the story. Well, if you think about him or talk about him bad, that's where he gets you. Like he's got a curse type thing going on. And I think that's where the interest comes in, where people treat him as though he's like a cursed thing that can get you even in your own home.
Fair enough.
But yeah, you're right. Like some stuff is kind of mundane when you take that out of the equation.
Yeah, definitely is kind of your average haunted story, I guess. Not haunted story, like whatever you want to call it. Supernatural story.
Esoteric story.
Yeah.
Yeah, Robert the Doll doesn't really have any connection to any of the ghost stories I've covered, and other stuff that I've talked about isn't doll related or entity related. We're talking about him too much in the conclusions. I think we did it.
Yeah, nice.
Foxxo Esoterica, everybody. Happy Halloween. This is going to be an actual outro, I promise. Hope this episode was scary. I think I thought it was going to be scarier than it was.
The episode's not over yet.
I'm sorry.
No, it's not your fault. That might just be mine. Do you have any particularly horrifying thing that you want to talk about so that way we can ground it in Halloween-ness and say something really scary? Content warning in case you hate bugs. That's what we're talking about now.
I get a lot of night terrors on which I wake up and there's like unidentifiable bugs crawling out of the walls.
Ooh.
And then it's horrifying.
That's worse than mine. Because
Yeah.
mine was, I was going to bring up my dreams. Like I've had a lot of dreams lately where like I'll wake up but I'm still dreaming, but I'm like in my bed in this room and it's like, okay, I think I'm awake for real. And I do my morning stuff, but I get trapped in a cycle and it ends up happening like 4 or 5 times before I'm awake for real.
Yeah.
I think yours is worse though.
Yeah, I don't like I had the other one, like, I didn't have that one in a while, but just like a hornet in the room. That one was like a very classic night terror for me.
Yeah.
I used to run out and...
Oh, I had like swarms of hornets in my rooms. Also spider webs, like just like a swarm of spiders and they're leaving their webs and it's all in the room and I can't walk anywhere. What else is scary in this world?
Spiders.
Yeah, mostly
We didn't
bugs.
have one here yet.
We had a bird yesterday. Just a fucking bird flew in the thing
Yeah.
about Germany is that the windows don't have screens in Germany.
Some windows have screens.
The windows in our apartment do not have screens.
Well, they are like skylights. They have like a lot of space for birds to fly in.
You can put a screen in a skylight.
Yeah, you know.
We just had a bird yesterday come in. It just fucking was in the kitchen. I was like, holy shit. I think you were like at school and I was just like, how do I do this?
Yeah, you just kind of wait.
Yeah.
Maybe get like a broom.
I waited and he left. That's not really scary, I guess, though.
It is, yeah, that's true. Birds are
Startling.
not scary.
We could stop the podcast right now, but I feel like I have to say something really scary to make up for the fact that I hyped up Robert the Doll.
We should probably quit.
That's fine. Robert, you're a legend. I love you regardless of whether or not you scare me or not. Honestly, you endear to me, and I think you're really cool. And that's how I'm going to end the podcast, by hyping you up, because you're a chill dude. So everybody have a fun time listening to the outro.
Except not quite. This is a Halloween episode, let it not be forgotten. And not wanting to let sleeping dogs lie, I decided to look online a bit more to see what causes a culture of absolute fear and reverence for Robert the Doll, more so than most ghosts. It is true that the biggest reason people fear Robert is probably the effect he has on people, even outside of the museum. True, the stories of random medical ailments and lost property seem a bit apocryphal, to use my very favorite podcast word, but there is something to a legend that has the ability to affect anyone at any time in ways that very much cause actual distress in people's lives, instead of just making the room cold or flickering the lights. It's very eerie to be looking up a video of Robert and finding that half of the comments are a simply written "Sorry, Robert" or "Thank you, Robert" without any other words attached to it. However, that wasn't enough for me. I looked deeper, and I found a YouTube video of the news report on Robert the Doll, featuring David Sloan, the author of the book. There were a few more stories in this interview, such as one where David and the docent of the museum, Goody Estevez, were attempting to take pictures of Robert, and although Goody had a very strong feeling that Robert explicitly wished to never be touched, David attempted to remove his hat for more pictures. Apparently, the doll's face became angry, and the camera wouldn't work at all, until David put his camera down, apologized to Robert, and returned his hat. Then, the camera took 4 pictures without anybody touching it. Another legend from the news report involves an anonymous man from Idaho bringing a camera to take pictures from around the museum, and when he returned home, he found that every single photo on his camera was mysteriously changed to a repeating picture of Robert. There is another anecdote where Goody came to the museum one day to find that a single chair had been set up in front of Robert's display case, facing him, despite her being the first to arrive at the locked museum. Lastly, Goody Estevez confirms that while there are other spirits at the museum, namely potential Civil War soldiers and even pirates and maritime people, Robert does indeed play the role of privateer, inasmuch as he commandeers the spotlight from the rest of them. This wasn't enough for me, though, and I dug deeper. I found a blogspot entry where someone who I couldn't get the name of posted some of the letters sent to Robert, and while nothing particularly horrifying is illuminated in them, I thought I'd share a couple. Dear Robert, my name is Andrew. I am a 17-year-old boy. I'd like to ask you a few questions. Have you met a poltergeist? Have you done any good deeds before, or has anyone done good deeds in front of you? How does it feel knowing that some people are scared of you? How do you communicate with people in person? Has anyone ever called you a secret weapon before? Don't worry, I'm not trying to compete with you or anything. Another letter. Dear Robert, you are an inspiration. You are my hero. I have created my own Robert the Doll, and he watches TV with me in my chair at night. My wife and children do not understand me. My Robert the Doll is the only one who listens. I don't know what I would do without Robert the Doll. Your friend, Jimmy. And lastly, Robert, I just wanted to let you know that I, unlike my friends, have total respect for you. When I questioned your powers last fall, I missed my flight from Miami and nearly missed an important court date. This weekend, when I related my tragic tale to my friends, they openly questioned whether you even existed, much less your powers of revenge. Well, the next day, one of them had a flight tire, there's a typo in the letter, and the others were trapped in traffic on Interstate 90. Perhaps now they understand. I fervently hope they will cease their mockery. Maybe even some will venture to your wonderful home and pay you a friendly visit. In the meantime, let me just say that I appreciate your attenuation of Tropical Storm Faye, and hope that the other denizens of Key West are appropriately grateful. Sincerely, Chris, Illinois. P.S. Please say hello to Elena for me. Elena, of course, being a reference to another Key West esoteric legend, although instead of being a ghost story, the account of Elena Hoyos and Carl von Kossel is a very real, very disturbing, and very true crimey story. Content warning. Necrophilia and a lot of general uncomfiness is a recurring theme in this story, and while I'm not going to get into it right now, if you look into it, do watch out for that. Inasmuch as it is a story involving von Kossel falling in love with a victim to tuberculosis, and him continuing to love her after her death, keeping her body intact, and making her a corpse bride. That is an entirely different story, though, and unrelated to Robert the Doll except by means of location alone. And it wasn't enough for me. The story of Robert the Doll had to be deeper. And so deeper I dug. I found one last blog entry that specifically caught my eye, wherein a patron to the museum, who also failed to specify a name, reports the most bizarre experience I'd heard of regarding Robert by far. This man was doing a Floridian ghost tour halfway through his trip with a few friends, and apparently his friends got a weird, distressing vibe that prompted them to only stay in the room for a few seconds with Robert before desperately wanting to leave. So before long, the narrator was in the room with the display case by himself. He asked permission to take a few pictures, but from what I could tell, he forgot to specify his name and where he was from. And because of that, his whole digital memory card was corrupted to the point where the files already on it were unrecoverable, and to where he couldn't take any more pictures on the camera. He kept trying, to no avail, going through his camera's settings, but when he looked up, he noticed that the locked glass display case was open by a good couple of inches. Robert was sitting in his chair still, but his head was angled so that he was looking right at the man. The man, knowing the legend, apologized profusely, apparently realizing the error of his ways, though he still neglected to mention his name or where he was from, even in the article up to this point. He backed up a bit, but noticed that his left leg had completely fallen asleep, and he stumbled to the ground. His hands and knees were unscathed, but he felt an odd pain on his abdomen when he hit the ground, and when he lifted up his shirt to investigate, he could see a long, thin cut had formed, and that he was bleeding. He looked up, and Robert was standing at the display case door, which had been noiselessly opened completely. The man panicked, but his leg was still asleep, so he crawled back awkwardly, unable to stand up. Robert didn't move, he simply stared at the struggling man. Eventually, though, our narrator got to his feet and bolted to the exit of the room. The lights went out before he could make it, and he heard scurrying and giggling behind him. The lights in the adjacent rooms, however, were still on, so he kept on running until he found the room where his friends were. The whole group, out of justifiable fear, apparently refrained from stepping foot into that room again with Robert. Whether or not the staff of the museum found the room or Robert to be in the position that they didn't leave him, the man didn't know. The group took no chances and left, even cutting their Floridian ghost tour short. That's where the story ends, except there is one final detail. Apparently when the man got home, he went to a Best Buy to try and get his camera fixed, and while the memory card was unsalvageable, the staff were able to repair the camera itself. One odd thing, however, was that there was one picture saved to the camera itself, even though the narrator claims that he specifically set the device to save the external memory cards only. Not to be dramatic or anything, but the simple picture was of Robert the Doll, sitting soundlessly in his display case. Well, thank you all once again for tuning into Foxxo Esoterica and joining along for Season 2. I'd like to give a shout out to my guest this evening, Zuma the Puma, the actual guest, and also to Robert the Doll himself, whose presence historically gets attached to projects about him, and who I hope is having a wonderful day. Without further ado, though, let's get to the review corner. Here's for the museum that has a lot of names. Nicole Schern writes, abridged, not expensive, a lot of history, and of course Robert the Doll. I did not take any photos of him. It's hot and smells slightly because everything is old and open. They give you a paper guide to read as you walk through, but there is no guide person to take you through the fort. 4 stars. Michael DeRoba says, small place but interesting history. Robert the Doll was interesting to see. Pictures of him don't do him justice. Oh, and be sure to ask him permission before taking him photo. 4 stars. Spartan Kitten writes, abridged. The staff is amazing, the where guide is a master of his craft. I can't say enough good things about this place. Robert does a lot, but he didn't make me write this review, I promise. The family running it is incredible. We'll be recommending this place to my friends and family. Much love, guys. Tell Robert hi for me and let him know I'll be back. Smiley face. 5 stars. Anyway, make sure you send a letter to Robert the Doll for listening to this podcast, apologizing to him just in case. That was half a joke. But just in case you're taking it seriously, not unlike a certain superstitious fox. Anyway, the address is 3501 South Roosevelt Boulevard, Key West, Florida, 33040, United States, and shipping to that address is expensive from Germany. And with that, this episode is coming to a close. You can find Foxxo Esoterica on Anchor, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, Spotify, and YouTube. You can also follow me on Twitter at FORSETIFOX, and you can please, I am in a different country, support Foxxo Esoterica on Patreon and Ko-fi at ForsettiFox for both. And also, if you feel like listening to music, you can check out Follow the Foxfire on a lot of different websites. Thanks to Sunel Chiquito for the podcast artwork, and thank you, Robert the Doll, for existing. All research, recording, editing, and music is done by yours truly. Have a happy Halloween and blessed Samhain all.